Rapidly rising car prices has bothered me for the past couple years now. I'm not saying you can't go out and buy a car, but rather that you can't do it for a reasonable price. Don't believe me? Well, here are factual prices I've pulled from Edmunds, Car Gurus, and Consumer Reports. Apologies for my voice, I am a bit sick right now. Anyways, last year the average cost of a new car was 47 grand. Even used cars are still averaging 28 grand. Meanwhile, in 2017, just 6 years ago, you could go to some grandma's lawn a few blocks down, point at a car that she doesn't drive anymore, all for the low price of 1,800 to maybe 3 grand, she'll give it to you. Even if you don't care about extra bells and whistles, you could literally go to used car lots and find old grocery getter beater cars for 1 grand or less. I've literally made videos showcasing these cars for those prices, using official factual data from Car Gurus at the time of making those videos. By the time that you've spent 5 to 10 grand on a used car back then, you were actually pretty well off. You got some decent wheels, like seriously, again, this is not anecdotal. Look at the past 6 years at my 2017 videos that feature these cars that you could buy for 10 grand. In those videos, I once again use actual factual data obtained from Car Gurus at the time. So you know that the market prices weren't just pulled from nowhere, and I'm not misremembering. Mach 1 Mustangs, Subaru WRXs, BMW M3 E46s, if you had 10 grand in your pocket, you actually could buy those cars. In fact, you had quite the amount of choices, and you were decently wealthy in those choices. Of course, the sad thing is, almost all those cars featured in those videos are almost double their prices now. I would later highlight this in 2 successor videos I made on the subject about a year ago. Social media has forever changed how we buy cars. While the internet has existed for some time now, social media has only recently took off in the past couple decades, growing more than 16 times its size, from a measly 5% of users in 2006 to now 79% of the population using social media in 2019. This is thanks to various social media apps gaining popularity due to widespread connectivity, internet availability, and of course just growing interest from both consumers and investors alike. The reason I bring this up is because social media has forever changed how we buy cars. In the past, when you bought a new car, you bought it because you liked it. You would only brag / show it to some people after the matter of fact of buying it. Even then, you likely only showed it off to your neighbor, a few coworkers, and maybe some family and friends. My father would do this every 5 or 7 years each time he got a new car. He would just show it off to a select few. They'd get bored of it after a few weeks, but it's okay because my father himself would be fine, because at the end of the day, he didn't buy the car to impress them, he bought it for himself, so he keeps using that car for several more years. This forever ingrained in my head that the standard of keeping a car had to be at least 5 to 7 years, optimally around 10 years, and usually at most around 15. Of course, there's nothing wrong with keeping a car longer than 15 years if you are willing to maintain it or just really like the nostalgia. Unfortunately, such a standard now eludes modern buyers, who change cars as frequently as, let's see this right here. There are some people who are changing cars every 18 to 24 months. That's basically 2 years. People are constantly saying that you should buy a car at least every 3 years and only keep it as long as 4 years tops. You also have constant tweets from people flexing about how if their car is a 2020 model, they're not going to date you if your car is any older than that model year. Dang, I guess a 2017 Lamborghini Aventador S is now a beater, guys. Man, who the hell cares about year of production? Only 7.7% of people are now keeping cars for 15 years. This used to be the standard prior to the 2000s. The average length of ownership in the early 2000s was around 11.2 years, but is now dropping to 8 years, again, per person. I know someone's gonna Google the statistic of how long are cars on the road. Of course, that statistic has gone up, but that's because it's changing owners. We're not talking about the vehicles themselves staying on the road. I'm talking about the people owning one vehicle for a longer time. So what the hell happened? Why are people keeping cars 1/5 the duration that they used to? I'll tell you why. It's because people nowadays can brag to the internet about their brand new car. If you look into the science behind it, this is a huge dopamine kick for some people, and it absolutely affects future decisions, and it absolutely can be addictive. It can also be harmful and even generate fear. There are people who now constantly see their friends changing cars. They constantly see the people they follow on social media change cars. So out of fear of being made fun of, they change their cars more frequently as well because of societal expectations. That gives rise to the current problem where people have artificially created a new car shortage, despite there being tons of cars still being produced. And of course, someone is going to mention the 2021 chip shortage and the 2020 quarantine. However, both of those issues should have have tapered off by now. Yet instead, even years later, we still see an increase in car prices. It's hard to blame a chip shortage when I can drive by new dealership lots right now and see brand new 2023 models lined up in 3 rows of 10 on every dealer lot I drive by. Each one, however, is now marked up to the moon, but I don't get it. The supply hasn't dwindled anymore, so why are the prices still high? Well, obviously because the demand still is too. We still have fools out here changing cars every 18 to 24 months. I mean, you just saw the same thing I just saw, so don't lie to me. You've probably experienced it too. Think of how many friends, peers, or social media influencers you follow who now treat cars as disposable items and discard them every few years, sometimes even months, instead of cherishing them and making memories of them for a decade at least. Exactly. I'm not the only one imagining this. This is a very real problem with very real consequences, which brings me to my next point. It's impossible to bargain now. Of course, someone was probably about to comment, well, if car prices are just high, just bargain, bro. You guys are stupid. I used to be one of the morons who tried to give this advice. I kept trying to give this advice to quote unquote resolve the situation, completely unaware of just how bad the situation has changed. I already have a running car. It's easy for us to tell the newer people who are trying to buy a car that they're stupid, when in actuality a lot of these people are young 20-somethings fresh out of college, struggling with student loan debt, and currently need to get a new 9-to-5 to not just pay their student loan debt, but just to make ends meet. Right now, they do need a car to get around. They have to buy one. There's no getting around it. If they buy a new car, 47 grand. Even if they go for a used car, it's still 28 grand on average. And that's where this problem becomes really, really stressful for them, and I can empathize with them. Because unlike shopping in a supermarket where a $5 item is indeed $5, car prices are never truly set in stone. It's literally stated by the manufacturer. It's why they write, manufacturer suggested retail price. The prices you see have always been a suggestion. Even if you are a so-called Giga Chad who'll walk in there, puff your chest out, and try to bargain at the dealer table, it doesn't really work anymore. In the past, by that I literally mean 2019, aka pre-pandemic, you could ask for a lower price. The salesman would pretend to walk to their manager and boom, come back and now you got a car for under MSRP. Nowadays, people are constantly buying them way over retail. And again, let's not just blame this for introverts who don't want to bargain, because even if you are willing to bargain, which I am and always am, I've tried to help 18 or so friends over the past few years in trying to buy a car, and even showed up to the dealership to supervise the transaction. I've stopped doing this around mid-2022 as I was driven insane by the realization that my old guard tactics of negotiating don't really work. And I don't mean that as in a new guard style of negotiation was developed. I mean that in the sense that negotiating and bargaining, depending on location, could just straight up be dead. 5 of those dealers I went to more or less told us this: why should I sell you this car for $1,000 under MSRP when I can sell it to some TikToker who's willing to buy it for 10 grand over? We're done here. He literally name dropped TikTok. A mid-40 something salesman said that he would rather sell the car to a TikTok clout chaser in the next week or so than waste any more time trying to bargain with me and undersell it at the cost of his commission. And this makes sense. It's his literal job to study car trends and consumer behavior. So even in his mid-40s, he started to use TikTok to learn about car buyers and trends. In 2019 prior, this wasn't even something that crossed their minds. Most dealers were so fearful of losing sales, they would do anything to prevent you from walking out the door. Consumers could literally hard counter bad salesmen by just walking towards the door, and another salesman who's looking to snatch up the commission will stop you and offer you a better deal than the previous salesman you just discontinued the transaction from. We, the consumers, had power at dealerships. We could even make them compete against each other by visiting multiple dealerships and bringing their papers over. None of this works anymore. We, the consumers, do not have power anymore. The dealer holds all the power because there's now an abundance of consumers to choose from. So they'd rather sell to the highest loaning moronic wannabe than an actual car enthusiast who loves the car and is trying to negotiate and get it for a reasonable price. We are competing against people we literally cannot beat, which is why the salesmen as well as the dealerships are extremely confident and just turn us down. They don't care about bargaining or playing around with it anymore because they've got plenty of people lined up that they can sell the car to for a much higher price than us. Modern internet culture moves so fast that anything 5 years ago, even on YouTube, is practically buried. And this isn't me just being a boomer and saying that, oh, the death of magazines and cable TV is why younger generations are making the wrong decision. Because as I said, even in the case of the internet with social media like YouTube, information from 5 years ago is already forgotten. A lot of people, young 20-somethings fresh out of college, when I tell them that they overpaid for a modern car that literally costed half, if not a quarter the price 5 years ago, they go, no way, you're just exaggerating, you're misremembering, until I literally pull up statistics and facts to show them that I'm not joking. And this blows their mind because they go, well, I wouldn't have known that because I didn't start looking into cars until literally this year. And that's what makes them so easy to get taken advantage of. Instead, they get prices from famous TikTokers, from YouTubers, and even from salesmen who run social media pages. So the wealthy flexers, the wannabe entrepreneurs, and the literal salesmen who are making commission off of the sale, who are running a social media page, are now the ones who are in control of what prices the newest generation sees. That's a huge contributing factor as to why these prices are just going so skyward. Interest and loan duration has drastically gone up. It's one thing for shortage or supply and demand and blah blah blah. This one is just pure greed on the dealership behalf. There is no excuse for this, and we as people should weaponize ourselves with knowledge and should help each other to not fall for these. It is disgusting, absolutely disgusting, that things like exotic car financing, aka 144-month loans, aka 12 years, even exist, or collector car financing that's 96 or 120 month. The average loan duration of a car is 84 months. Average, by the way, meaning that there's people taking over to contribute to the rising number, right? That's 7 years of your life. Think of how many people you know who aren't even keeping their cars anymore every 7 years, but are taking 7 years loans on them. Think of how weird that is. And that actually brings me to a story of my own brother, who for the longest time was trying to escape automotive debt because he was changing cars faster than the loan periods were ending, which creates a situation called carrying over negative equity. People basically get trapped in loans forever if they're literally outpacing the duration of the loan. And with how long people's loans are, it's very easy to do that. It's honestly kind of hopeless, hence the title of this video, and no one individual, no matter how knowledgeable, can stop this tsunami of morons who are now flooding the market. Unlike my other videos, there's no conclusion, no happy ending, just a lingering question, a fear that I now passed on to you viewers watching. What is our future? What will our future be as a community of car lovers who prided ourselves in working on cars, buying them to cherish every moment, and tuning them to beat up supercars several times the price? What will happen to that culture when those tuner cars cost just as much as supercars? When no one has the attention span anymore or willpower to even work on their own cars anymore, and they're just shop babies and go even further, not only in the debt for the car purchase, but even take loans on the mods and even take loans on the labor done at the shop instead of learning to just turn some wrenches. So now even purchasing the damn car only becomes a hobby exclusive to the rich and the wealthy and the famous, and not to the average everyday man who is willing to just buy the car, work on the car, fix the car, tune the car. There's no more passion, no more hard work, no more appreciation. So what will we do if that's the culture, if that's the future that we're faced with? Even in spite of all this hopelessness, in spite of all this defeatist rhetoric I just told you, I'm so hopelessly finding myself still hopeful. I found a place where I still could turn wrenches. I found a place where I still could buy new rides and parts. I found a place that still was filled with warm smiles, helpful hearts, and passionate minds. So maybe I did lie. I do have a solution, a conclusion. Maybe though, it might not work for you, but it sure as hell worked for me. Funnily enough, it was the place I started at long before I even made this YouTube channel. I'll keep my heart close to cars, remaining hopelessly hopeful it won't get any worse, maybe even start to get a little better, but if things do go in an uncontrollable roll or break out of despair, you'll know where to find me. After all, I promised from the start to be an automotive channel, but surprise, the automotive category has more than just cars. I'll always make videos on cars still, but maybe it's time I bring something from my past as I break forward towards the future. Having said that, thanks for watching, and subscribe and like this video if you look forward to more automotive content. 4 or 2 wheels. See y'all next time. Blade Angel out.